All right, so I think I'm live. Can you see me? Can you hear me? If there's anyone here, please let me know. This is going to be a really interesting class. Today we'll be learning about what web development is, right? This is going to be a very basic introduction to web development. All right, we'll start off and we'll talk about the very basic concepts, and then we'll progress from there on. All right, we have 2 people watching. Can you all see me? Can you all hear me? Please let me know. All right, I'll just wait for one or 2 more minutes for everyone to join in, and then we'll get started. Now, web development is really interesting. You can do a lot of things once you know how you can create websites and how to create these structures that people can use. Right? So we'll just take a look at how to get started. These are the fundamental building blocks of web development. You have HTML and then you have CSS. By the way, guys, if you have any friends who are into coding or web development who are interested, just let them know that this is an amazing way for them to learn programming in general, right? So tell them about this. Okay, so what I'll do is that I'll now get started from the very basics, a basic introduction to what web development is. Okay, so let's get started, guys. Let me just open it up. Yeah. So intro to web development, this is what this course or this class is going to aim to do. We'll start from the very basics. We'll see how to create websites and we'll see what HTML is. We'll see what CSS is. And first of all, what is web development? It is a field of computer science or just software development in general in which you create websites, right? You can create websites that other people can use. So there are 2 aspects to basically web development. First of all, you have the development itself, in which you actually create the structure of the website, create the interactivity of the website. And then there's another part which is called as design. Okay. Now in design, what you do is that you basically create the way it looks, right? So basically, Steve Jobs has this one quote which says, design is not how it looks, design is actually how it works, right? But basically what he's saying is that you need to create how the website will look like. And for doing that, we'll be using something called as Figma. Okay, so you can just search, you can say Figma, wireframes, and with that you can get started. And wireframing is basically a way for you to create a very basic, very basic look of a website, for example, right? So how that works is that you can take a look at these wireframe kits. I'll show you an example of how that works. So I'll just log into this. Just give me a minute. This is not completely included to what we'll be doing, but I'll give you a very brief example of how it works. Right, so I'm in a college called as BITS Pilani, and we have this cultural fest called as Waves. So we need to create the website of Waves, right? So what we do is that we means like we are a part of a development group and we create these wireframes. So there are multiple people. Let me go ahead and show you what a wireframe would look like. So let's take a look at Akanksha wireframes, and I'll just zoom in and you'll see what I'm talking about now. So this is a very basic way for you to represent a website and how it will function. I can just zoom in. Let's just zoom into 50%. And this is what you'll see, right? So this is the website of Waves that we are trying to create. Waves is a festival that we have. So first of all, this is what we have. We first of all have the name Waves itself. If you go down, you have a basic introduction of what the event is all about. Then you have this one banner in which you might have a video embedded on the page. Then if you move down, you will have this sort of a gallery. Now, if you have seen how Apple App Store works, right? So Apple App Store, iOS 6, for example, if you go and take a look at that, you will see that it has something very similar, right? So it does the same thing. You have this way for you to represent some pictures. That's what this would be looking like, right? So you have these photos, and these photos come and go like this. So there's a main photo, then it goes back, and there's another photo that comes to the center, then it goes back, and that's how these things generally work. This is a way for you to represent some photos. Then you might have some events, and that's a way for you to just show what these events really are. So basically we create this wireframe. It's just a design of what the website would look like. Then what we do is that we try to just export this, right? So we can export it into like a PDF, and then we can view it afterwards, right? So export frames to PDF. When you click on this, you will get this PDF. If you open it up, it would look like this, right? So this is a PDF of the website, and you can just give it to the developers then. And the developer's job would be to convert this PDF into an actual fully functional website. So what happens is that you can just click on any particular option, and then you will be redirected. So let's say you click on events. Okay, this is the first page. You click on events, and then this is what you end up getting. This is a page that opens up when you click on events. So that's what you do. Let's say someone clicks on register. Then this is the page that opens up when someone clicks on register. So this is just a way for you to represent how you can make a website, and this is very simple. You can just do it by dragging and dropping something. You can just create something over here, right? And this is another way for you to represent the website. So these are just some ideas that someone is creating. They give it to people that can actually code it out and create and convert it into an actual fully working website. And yeah, that's just basically how it works, right? So this is really important. You need to create great designs, right? So if you want to learn more about what great design are, what great design looks like, just go to Behance web UI, web design portfolio or something, right? Here you will find a lot of designers around the world who are creating some amazing looking websites, and you can just take a look at how these websites look like, how they work. Let me just search for a website. And here you can see these are the types of websites that some amazing designers are creating around the world. This is a really good looking website. So basically I'm just telling you that design element is very much crucial to whatever you're creating on the web, right? That's the most important part, because if you open up something like apple.in, which is the Apple website in India, this design, they have not just come up with it randomly. They have tried it a lot. They have experimented with a lot of different options, and that is when they have come up with one solution, and this is what this website should actually look like, right? So that's really important. As you can see, these things work because they have been programmed to work like this. This is not like they have just thought about this and then they've randomly just made it. It has taken them a lot of understanding, a lot of experimentation to come up to this design, and that's why this looks really good. So design is this design is like a big aspect of web development. Basically, you need to learn how to create great websites. Okay, so that's what you need to keep in mind. We won't be focusing too much into web design part, but I just want to give you a brief introduction into how this thing would work. All right. This is an amazing looking website though. So let me just close this, and you would basically be using something called as Figma, or you can also use Adobe XDesign to create these wireframes. And they don't have the color because that is a different aspect. You have, first of all, the typography, then you have the hierarchy, so hierarchical structure. What that means is that if I again go to apple.in, you will see that the headline is iPhone 12 in bold. Then it says that blast past fast. Okay, so this is not in bold, and the font size is also a lot smaller. Then you have this faintly visible text. What this tells the viewer is that you should focus first of all on iPhone 12, then focus on blast past fast, and it doesn't matter much if you look at this or not. It's not like a big deal. This is what you need to understand. Okay, it conveys something. It is thought about a lot. Like people have thought how to create this properly, and then they've made it because this is the best way to represent something. Then you have a link. So the link should not be of the same color as the iPhone 12 or the black color, or else it would look similar. So you create this blue colored link, and you have buy, and then you have learn more. So this is just a few ways for you to create a visual hierarchy. And again, we have videos, we have photos as well that look a lot good over here. Right, so yeah, that's just a basic understanding of design. Let me close this up. Let me close this part as well. And we are talking about web development. So you've learned about what design is, how to get started with design. I won't go into much depth about this now. Next, let's talk about the development part. So let's say someone has already given you the web UI. How should it actually look like? Now you need to convert it into actual code. You need to code it out, right? And if you want to do that, a great way to get started would be web development's front end, right? So what is a front end? Front end is basically how the website would look like, right? So let's say you create a front end for a website. The client, right, the users, what they see is the front end part. This is what they'll see at the front end, and the back end is something that people like us will see. Us developers will be able to see that. Okay, so that's just something for you to keep in mind. Always understand that front end is what the client sees, and backend is what we as developers will be able to interact with, right? So there are a lot of technologies that you can use to learn both front end and back end. For this class, we'll only be focusing on the front end aspect, and more importantly, we'll be talking about the building blocks of front end, which is just HTML and CSS. This is going to be a very much beginner friendly course. If you have never learned coding before, it is completely fine. It's completely going to be okay. But if you have some understanding, then you can go a lot further. All right, now I'll talk about, let's see what else do we have. Yeah, web development, backend, front end, we've talked about this. If you want to learn front end, you would first of all learn about what HTML, CSS are. Then you would actually learn about JavaScript, right? So JavaScript is how you can create that interactive feature that whenever you click something, something happens. There is some animation or some effect that happens when you click on something. That will only happen when you have JavaScript with you, right? So we are not covering JavaScript. We're just talking about how to create a front end that just looks good, doesn't do anything, but it looks good. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Next, let's take a look at what we learned. So again, as I've talked, HTML5, we'll see what tags and attributes are. We'll see what CSS is. We'll see the basic, what is a flex, what is a grid, animations in CSS. And then if we have the time, we'll also see what Bootstrap is. All right, requirements would again be Google Chrome, right? You need to have a web browser with which you can interact with the web and its elements. Now, I prefer you to use Google Chrome because it's just a superior way for you to learn web development. Sure, you can use Mozilla Firefox or Safari as well, but this is what is more recommended. So let's say I go to a very simple Google website. I can now just click on inspect. This is what I actually see, right? This is all the code of this website that I can see right now. Now the benefit is that I can quickly start generating some JavaScript code over here. I can start writing over here, but I can also see the style that is being used here, right? So all of these things are visible to me. You can also change a few things over here if that is what you want to do. I can see like this Google, this I have, right? So I can just reduce its height as well if that's what I want. So let's say I want to make it 20, for example. Okay, nothing really happened. But basically, what you can do is that you can reduce its size and you can just tinker around with it, and you can see how it affects the look and feel of the website. But this is really important. The Chrome developer tools is the most important part of Google Chrome as a developer. We'll be seeing a lot of things that you can use inside of this thing, and we'll see how this thing really works. First of all, you have elements, which is basically going to be the complete HTML of the website. Then you have the styles, which would show you the CSS of it. Okay, so this is really important. Then you have this box model, which we'll talk about in the future of this class. So just wait for that. We are coming to that part. you have layout, all of these things are available to you. Then you go to console. This is where you can start typing the JavaScript command. You can also take a look at the sources, where exactly are all the images and all the content is coming from. So most of it is coming from the Google server, which is fine. Then you have network. This gives you more information about all the things on the web page. Performance, memory, all of these things are a little bit complicated. We won't talk about that right now. So I'll just close this part. Okay, so let me just close this right now. And as you can see, I have reduced the size of the Google logo, just like that. Anyways, if I just refresh it, it again goes back to normal. All right, so that was about Chrome developer tools. Just get yourself like a Google Chrome browser. Then we'll talk about code editor. Now again, you can just go, you can get yourself VS Code. That's what I like to use. Just type VS Code and you'll see a download button for that. Download it if you are on Windows, or if you are on macOS, just click on this stable download and you'll get the version for that. Now, one thing to understand is that whenever you will be installing Visual Studio Code, there'll be multiple options which say add Visual Code to path, or it would say add allow Visual Code to open in code. There would be something like this. Just enable all of those checkboxes and move ahead. All right, so we have done that. We have basically gotten Visual Studio Code, and now it's the time for us to move on. And right now we'll be talking about HTML, right? So let's get started. The first thing to understand is what is HTML itself. HTML is basically going to be hypertext markup language. Hypertext markup language. What does that mean? It would give you the basic elements of a website. This is going to be how the website actually looks like in reality, right? Now we'll see how to code it out. We'll see exactly everything about HTML5 in this class. We'll see what are tags, we'll see what are attributes. So all of that is coming. We'll see what is CSS3 as well, and all of these things we'll be studying. So let me just open up my Visual Studio Code. Let me just close this part. I'll open up another folder. Okay, so I'll just name it HTML CSS. Select this folder and I can just open it up. Right, so first of all, what I'll do is that I'll create a new file. And by the way, I'm using something called as VS Code. Okay, VS Code is what I'll use to write my code. And first of all, once you have installed VS Code, what you'll do is that you'll go into the extensions. And here you'll search for something called as live server. Click on enter and you will see something called as live server. Now this is a way for you to create yourself a server on your laptop itself and just run the website. Currently I already have it installed. So, but yeah, for you, you might need to install it yourself first of all. So just do that, install it. And once you have it up and running, it's going to be very like a small size. So you don't need to worry too much about it. The first thing to understand is that let's try to create a very simple index HTML file. So I'll close this up. I'll click on plus icon over here. And I'll call this index.html, right? Index.html. What is .html? HTML is an extension for this file, which says that this file is going to be HTML file. This is going to be hypertext markup language. Now, how this works, I'll talk about this. So basically, in HTML is just a way for you to create the very simple normal elements of a website. So if I go on some website called as Your Story, you'll see that it has a lot of elements, right? It has an image over here. It has this logo over here. You have all of these nav bars over here. So basically what is happening is that you can create some very simple, oh my God. Yeah, you can create some very simple elements for which you will be using them afterwards in your website. So to create those elements, we'll be using something called as HTML5, right? Very basic elements, like you have this one card, there are multiple cards, so you can create some HTML code for that. And we'll talk about exactly everything, how to get started with it, right? Any questions, guys? Shreya, hi, I'm a little late, no problem. Shantanu, hi Shantanu. All right. So I'll continue. Basically, we've just talked about how what web development is and what is web design and what are the differences between the two. Then we are talking now about HTML5. We have just gotten started. I'll close this up right now and we'll focus into index.html. So first thing to understand is how can you get started with this, right? So first of all, you'll create something called as a tag. Okay, so this is a very simple HTML tag. Okay, this is going to be a way for you to write this complete program, for example. So here what you'll do is that first of all you have HTML, there is one opening tag, there is one closing tag. Okay, and inside of this you have the body. Okay, now before the body you also have something called as head. Okay, so head is where all of the information about this web page will actually go. What are the information? Well, first of all you have something called as a title. Okay, now if I'll make the title called as Intro to Web Development. Okay, now if I actually, before saving this, I can actually just go to, what is it, HTML CSS. Yeah, so if I can just go here and I can just open this up. So right now the title over here just says index.html. I will now save this and I'll refresh it again, and now it says Intro to Web Development, right? So that's what we have done so far. Let's try to do a lot. Let's try to do something else, right? So what happens is that you don't need to write the same thing again and again. You can actually use something called as a boilerplate. Boilerplate is just a way for you to write some very basic syntax. Yeah, so this is the most common thing that you'll be doing in all the websites. Whatever web page you're creating in HTML, you will always have this code that you'll need to write in the beginning. So this is just a starter code for you that you can use. Okay, so just keep this one thing in mind. Next, what we'll do is that we'll just call this, we'll change the title and we'll call this, let's say, first web page. Okay, I'll save this and I'll use something called as live server. I'll click on open with live server. You need to install this first of all, and when you do install it, this is what it would look like. I'll do this and yeah. Okay, so as you can see, basically what happens is that this will be updating the website whenever I make a change to the code, right? So that's the benefit of using it. Okay, now inside of the body, I can start typing some sort of text, right? So I can just say something like, I can just have some text over here and it would show in the web page, right? So say I save this and now it shows me Ishan Sharma. But the thing is that there are a few things that we can discuss. So first of all, we have something that is called as a heading, right? We have a heading. Then we have a p tag. Then we have something called as a, and by the way, this text that you are seeing in the body, this is called as comments. Okay, so we are not writing code right now. We're just writing some normal text that will not be interpreted by the program. It is only for us humans to understand and just to refer whenever we are having some difficulty understanding the code. So that's what we'll do here. We'll have heading over here. Then we'll have a p tag. Then the next thing would be, there are a lot of things actually. You have table, images, then you have a lot of other ones as well that we'll talk about in the future. So first of all, let's talk about how can you create a very simple heading. So for that, we'll use something called as h1. Okay, just say h1 and then click on enter. It says emit abbreviation. It is basically going to fill the gap that you have, fill the the code that should be there. So when you just say h1, it automatically creates an ending tag for h1. It creates those brackets, and yeah, you can start using it then. So between these h1, I'll start writing my heading. So let's say I can say something like Spider-Man movies, for example, right? If I save this, it gets changed, and now we see something like this. All right, now what you can do is that you can go to the next part, and here you can start writing some text. So we have this p tag, and here you can just say something that Spider-Man is a great Marvel MCU character. He's a great MCU character actually. Right, so you can just save this and it would show you in the website itself. This is what it looks like. This is the difference between a paragraph and a full-fledged like heading. Now you can have heading of multiple, sizes as well. So if I just copy this, I can go here, I can have like a H2. You can save it, and now it shows me Spider-Man movies, but the text is a lot smaller comparatively. I can just copy it, and I can show you that whenever you create something called as H3, you paste it over here. Let's say you do H4, for example, and you do this. Then you do H5. You put this up, and then you say H6. That is the last heading that you can have. Okay, if you save this, you will see that this is how it appears. So you have H6, then you have H5, you have H4, H3, and that's how it looks like. Okay, so these are all the headings that you can have, and these are the multiple versions of it: H1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and depending on how big the number is, the size actually reduces a lot. Okay, so that's what you need to keep in mind. All right, we have talked about paragraphs, we have talked about headings. Let me just clear it up a little bit. So let's say I only want to have H2. Then we have some text over here. Let me just save this up. Next, what I'll do is that I will create a very simple image, right? So I can have images over here. IMG, I'll just do IMG, and I will have this thing pop up. Now what you'll notice is that this IMG tag does not have a closing tag, right? So there is no something called as like something like this does not exist. So yeah, that's just something to keep in mind. So okay, because it is not compulsory for all the tags to actually close. Some tags only have just an opening tag. There is no closing tag to it because it's just a one simple tag. Okay, for example, an image. If you just want to put an image, you don't need to have like a closing tag for that. Let's search for a Spider-Man movie, and we can just go to the videos, actually the images, and here I can just have some picture. So let's take an example of maybe this one. I'll just copy the link address or copy the image address, and then I'll just put it over here. Okay, if I save, it refreshes, and now we can see this huge image over here. Now this image is going to be really, really, really big because again it is coming in its complete like full the full resolution actually. So you can actually reduce this. So what you can do is you can go here and you can start tinkering with the width of it, right? So you can say something called as max width. You can have a style aspect to it, and you can say max width, and you can say max width is going to be let's just say 30 or 100 pixels. Save this, and now you'll see that it is now looking a lot smaller because again we have said that the max width of this image is going to be 100 pixels. Now this is not a good thing to do because we are using just one file to put in the style as well as to put in the image attribute, the element. So we'll talk about how to manage that afterwards, but right now I'll just get rid of this part. So I can just get rid of this. Okay, what is this alt? Okay, what is ALT? Now what this does is that, let's say your image does not load, it fails to load. Then this is what you'll see. So you can just say this is an image of all the Spider-Mans in one video, in one movie, for example, right? So You can now just save it, and you will see that it changes its size. But if this photo would not be loading, then you would actually see this text appearing. So let's say I will just get rid of this, for example, save it, and then it says this is an image of all the Spider-Man in one movie, right? Let me just put in the .jpg, save this, and that's when we get this. Anyways guys, let me just get rid of this part. Let me just make sure that the style is applied here, max width, and I'll just say let's make it 400 pixels. Let's save this, and this is what we end up getting. The next part for us would be to have some sort of a list. So we are going to list all the movies ever made on Spider-Man, right? All the live action movies. So what we can do here is that we can start off by, let's say I can just say something like this. I can have an H3, which would say list of Spider-Man movies. And then I can have like a P tag which says here are all the Spider-Man movies ever made. Okay, I'll save this, and this is what I end up getting. I get this. It says here are all the Spider-Man movies ever made. So what I'll do now is I'll go to the next one, and now we'll talk about how to create a list in HTML. So what you do is that you first of all, any questions by the way? Okay, all right. So what I do is that first of all, I'll take a look at H3, then we have P tag, and after that we have an OL, which is called as an ordered list. So the ordered list, there are actually two types of lists. First of all, you have an ordered list, then you have an unordered list. Now the difference between two is very simple. Basically what happens is that an ordered list is going to show you that it has the numbers in it, right? So in this OL, I can just have a list element, which would be li tag. And in this, I can just say Spider-Man 1, which came in 2003, I think. Right, then we can have another li tag. What you can do is that, let's say you want to have multiple li tags. So you can just say li into 5, and then you can have 5 li tags like that. So that's actually something really useful. You can take a look at this if you want to do something like this, right? So I'll just get rid of these, and we'll only have the 2 more. So we'll say Spider-Man Far From Home, and we'll say Into the Spider-Verse. So we have basically created these 3 list items of this all the movies of Spider-Man, right? So what we can do next is maybe we can have like a link, right? We can have like a P tag, and then we can say refer here for more info. And what we can do now is, whenever we have here right now, right? So we can actually turn it into like a link. So for that, I'll have a tag over here, and I can just put this X, and I can put it over here. What happens in a tag is that it is like a anchor tag. Okay, so we can just put in href, and here we'll need to put in whatever link we wanted to redirect to. So I can just search, I can maybe go over here, and I can just copy this link, I can paste it over here, save, and this is what we end up getting. Click refer here for more info. Right, very simple, nothing too complicated. And there you have it, a very simple website that uses simple HTML to create this web page, right? So you have a list of Spider-Man movies. We talked about creating lists. We can also create maybe unordered lists. So for that, you will just use UL and UL over here as well. Save this, and now the bullets have appeared instead of the numbers 1, 2, 3. Instead of that, we now have the bullets. right? So that's what you can do here. Very simple. You've only created a simple website so far. Now let's move on and talk about a little bit more complicated things. Right, now there's one more thing that you can do. You can go into this A tag and you can say target is going to be underscore blank. What it does is that it understands, okay, you want to use this, you want to basically go to the next, you want to open this link into a new tab. So if I click here for more info, it opens a new tab for you. And this is where you can just learn about all the Spider-Mans. But if I did not have this target with me, so I can get rid of this, save it over here. And now if I click here, it would just open it up on my same tab. So that's just something to keep in mind. All right, so we have basically learned about what are the different ways for you to create content for the website. So we basically have a heading, we have some paragraph, we have image, we have some lists, and then we have a link over here. Right, let's talk about something else. Let's talk about tables. How can you create a table? Right, now to create tables, let me just open another one. So I'll save right now. I'll open another one and I'll call this maybe table.html. And instead of this, I'll start off by just having the very simple boilerplate. You might be wondering what is this meta tag, right? So we won't talk about this in detail right now, but this is just a way for you to tell that, okay, this would have to be responsive, and for that you'll have to just use this. Okay, I'll just open it up. I'll call this as tables in HTML. I'll save this part. I will get rid of this. I'll stop my server. I will open my server once more now. This is what I end up getting, right? So let me close these things, and now we can start talking about tables in HTML. So let's create a very simple table. For table, you first of all need to understand how it works. So first of all, you have cells in a table. So you need to create those cells. And to create that, we will see what we can do. First of all, we'll have a very simple H1. It would say, it would have the Spider-Man itself, right? So Spider-Man actors, for example, all the people that have acted in Spider-Man movies, basically we can just create a table with their name and with a few more information about them. Right, very simple, nothing too complicated. What we'll do next is going to be, we'll have this thing called as a table tag. Okay, now in the table tag, we'll have something called as a T head. Okay, now T head is just short for table heading, and we'll create a very basic heading for the table. Now, first of all, we need to create something called a TR. Okay, so what TR is basically called as a table row. Okay, so you'll create multiple rows, and in that you will have the content. In this, you will have one head. Okay, so for that you'll say TH. This is going to be one cell for you, and in this you can start writing, okay, this would be the, for example, image of the person, right? And then you can have one more TH, which would say that the name of that actor. One more that would say maybe like the age of that person. So I'll do this, put in the age. If I save, you won't see much. It would just be very simple, image, name, age. Let's move on. Let's take a look at the next thing. We can also have maybe where are they born or something, but I'll just keep it short, and then we will get to the next part. So once we have done the TR part, so let's just close the TR, and after that we will move on. We will also close the T head because we have basically talked about the three parts. Next, let's go into T body, right? So you have T head, then you have T body. Very simple to understand. And in this, we'll start off with our TR, right? So TR, then we have TD, which basically says table data. And in this, we will have the image. So for the first one, let's just say image. And for this, let's just try to find like an image of a Spider-Man. Spider-Man actor. You just go to images and you'll see, for example, this guy, right? So what's his name? Peter Parker, Tobey Maguire, right? So you can just search for Tobey Maguire, and yeah, here he is. So you can just copy this, you can just say copy image address, and then you can just paste it over here and then save, and you will see that this thing pops up in the image part. Now what we can do is we can put in the alt as well. We can just say Tobey Maguire. All right, next what we'll do is, let me just save this part. I have the image and I have the alt as well. Next, I'll go to the next part and I'll call this TD again. And in this, I'll just say their name. Okay, then we'll have another TD, which would say the age, right? So let's say what's his age right now. Whatever the age is, like what, 30, 40, 45 years, right? So we can just put in 45 years right now. 45, save this part, and you will see 45 appearing over there. Right, so that's what you can do. Very simple way if I just show some content. Are you going to take JavaScript for this session? No, I will not be talking about JavaScript in particular. And what is the function of meta tag? Well, that is basically used for to tell the browser that, okay, this is using HTML5 syntax and we're trying to create a responsive website. So that's just something that you can put in. If you don't, it's completely fine. It's not like a big deal right now. Okay, so that's what you can do. One more thing to talk about, guys, just a quick topic that I want to talk about is this. We are doing an event called as Creative Corners Timeout, in which you can join and you can learn about a lot of skills. So for example, you can learn doodling, you can learn magic tricks, you can learn robotics, and a part of that is also going to be coding. I am also taking a free class on the 31st of January, 10 a.m. And over there, I'll be talking about how you can learn about the 7 amazing modules in Python and 3 data structures that you can use to master them. Okay, so that's what we'll be talking about in that complete class, 10 a.m. and the event in general will be starting off from 9 a.m. as you can see. Okay, so just join it if you're interested. It would be really fun, and it would be on the Unacademy Creative Corner platform. The link to sign up would be in the description, so take a look at that. Okay, so yeah. Also, if you are interested, if you want to learn a lot more into web development, I have a complete course on the Plus subscription of Creative Corner in which I talk about this in a lot more depth. I have created multiple of these projects over there. So if you want to sign up for that, you can use this code called as IshanYT10, with which you can get 10% discount on the subscription, right? And this is what your homework assignment would be for this class that you are watching right now. Build a very simple website using HTML and CSS. I want you to create this website once you have learned whatever I'm telling you today. Okay, so yeah, just do this, and you can also submit whatever you have made. Make a video out of it. Just say that, okay, hey everyone, today I'll be talking about how to create how I made my first website using HTML CSS, and I'll show you how I got started, what are the problems I faced, and how I overcome the problems, right? So just say something like that, create a video and send it to us. But yeah, do apply for this. Just try to create some of your own websites. You can also join the another free class that I have on 31st of January, 9 or 10 a.m. right? So do join that. But anyways, let me just close this part right now. Let me get back to the topic, and we are right now again talking about tables in HTML. So now what I'll do, I have the same thing. I'll just copy this part. I will copy this part and I'll put it over here for 1, then we have for 2. If I save this, I'll have multiple versions of them. But now I will again just search for Tom Holland. Click on enter, and here I can just go to images and I can get a picture of him. I'll just get rid of this completely. If I save, you can see that now we have the Tom Holland written over here, or the photo actually. Then we can again just say Tom Holland, and we can change the age. What is his age? 24 years. I can just get rid of this, 24, save, and then we want Andrew Garfield. (37) Andrew Garfield. So I'll just change this. I'll make it Andrew Garfield, and 37, and I need the photo now. So let's just get the quick photo. So for example, we have this, copy image address, and we'll just put it over here. Save it all, and now you can see we have a very simple table which says image, name, and the age, right? Very simple, nothing too complicated, and it looks good as well. Now what you can also do is you can go up and you can say that table border is equal to 1. If you save now, you will see that now it has the borders. So that's really important. You can create borders. You can also make it 2, save, and you will see that it is getting more bold as we increase the numbers, right? So that's just something to keep in mind. Get it back to 1. All right. So far we have learned about how to have your very simple table in HTML. We learned about very basic tags in HTML. Now let's take a look at something else. Let's try to create something else, right? So for this case, we'll be creating a form, right? We'll see how forms work. I'll just drink some water. If you have any questions, please ask me. This might look boring to you, but what happens is that if you do this consistently, you will be able to make some really good front ends, right? So it starts small, it starts very simple designs that we are making right now, but after that you can progress and you can make a lot of amazing things. Okay, let me just close this and let's talk about something else. Let's try to create a very simple form.html. So I'll get rid of the live server for table.html, close this up, and I'll go back here and I'll just have very simple oh my god, what did I just do? Yeah, I can just call this forms in HTML. Save this and I'll open it up with live server. Okay, looks good. And now let's just quickly get started. So I can just say something like H1, and then we can say students can sign up here. Save, and you can see the effect happening live. Okay, so now let's try to create a form tag. Okay, this is a form tag. Very simple. The action that is written over here, we'll just get rid of the action for now. Okay, form, we'll take a look at label first of all, right? So label has a few things that we can enter, but we'll just keep it empty right now, and we'll have label. Inside of this label, we will call this email address, right? So let's say you want to collect email addresses of people. ADDR ESS, and after this we will have an input tag. Now this input tag, the type would be email, right? So what type does is that it tells you what type of input are you expecting. Are you expecting some number? Are you expecting some password? And based on that, it changes the way it appears, right? We can also say that the name would be equal to email. We can say the placeholder and the placeholder would be it would just say your email here. That's what you can just do here. Then you can also just say required. Now what required does is that it just gives you a condition that you have to fill this up before moving ahead, right? So you cannot just leave it empty, right? So that's what you can do. If I save this right now, you'll see this thing says email address, and I can just put in my email address right here. Okay, very simple, nothing too complex. Let's move on to the next part, and this would be another one, label. This time we'll be doing password. So I'll just say password here. And inside of this, we'll have an input field, but the input field would that be of a password. Okay, so that's what we'll do. It would have the name attribute of a password. And then it would have the next part, which is what's it called, placeholder again, right? So we can have placeholder, and that would say your pass. Then we can have another thing that would say required. So you know what we are doing is that these things that we are writing, these conditions, placeholder equal to your pass, name equal to password, type equal to password. This basically is an attribute. This is a quality of our tag. The tag is input, and the attribute is these type, name, and all the other things that we are writing along with it. So that's important to keep in mind. If I save this right now, I can also see one thing that is popping up, password, and it says your pass, right? Okay, so we have the email address, we have the password. Now let's try to build something else. Let's try to create a submit button, right? So let's create another label. It would be a very simple label in which we'll have a simple input which would say submit. Okay, and that would be all. If I save this, you can see that there is a button which says submit. Okay, you can just press it, but nothing actually would happen. It would prompt you to actually fill out this first of all. And if you have not filled it out, then it won't work. Right, so that's how this thing works basically. You can also see that whenever I have specified that the type would have to be email, then it checks that have I used @, have I used .com over there, and if I have not, then it would again tell me to do that. It says, right, it says please include an @ in the email address 123 is invalid. Right, so that's what you need to do. All right. You're not able to see what you are writing down in the code. Oh, I'm really sorry about that. Right, so what I did is that I created one more label, and in that label I said I have an input, type is going to be submit, but that is all. Okay, that's what I did. I hope you can now see what I'm doing. All right, so we have done that. Now let's move on. Let's do something else. We can have a link over here as well. This link can be like a tag, and then in the a tag we can put in a lot of things. So we can say something like register.html. This would be the href for it, which is a hyperreference, which basically says that I want to refer to that link or to that place in the laptop or the computer that you have file system. Okay, so we see that the target is going to be underscore blank. Then we see that rel, there's something called as rel, which says no opener, no referrer, right? So no. If I save this right now, nothing really happens, but what we can do now, we can just say don't have an account, register here, right? So we can just say sign up now. Save this, and now it says don't have an account, sign up right now. So when you click on this, it will get you to another page in which you can sign up for it. All right, so that was a very simple form that we've just written in HTML. This is the most common thing that we'll be using all the time. We'll be using image tags, we'll be using lists, and then we'll also be using forms in HTML, and I'll show you how these things would work afterwards. But yeah, that was a very basic introduction to how HTML and CSS, HTML works at least. We can create some other complicated things as well. You can have some more like a account registration page in which you'll be having like a first name, you can have like a last name, you can have a lot of other things as well. We can create that too if that's going to be like a good thing. Okay, so we can also do that. So if I click here, I can click on this, I can say new account, right? New account .html, and over here I'll do the same thing. I will say this, right? So what I'll say is, first of all, I'll need to have an h1 which would say account registration portal, for example, right? I'll save this, and I'll first of all close this for the forms one, and I'll open it again for the live server one. Okay, so we now basically have this account registration portal. We need to start off by some input tags. So first of all, I'll say this, I'll have a very basic form action. We won't put the action right now. In the form, we will have a p tag, and in this p tag, we'll start off with a label, right? So label for, we'll just say first name. Okay, and we can just say first name, and then we'll put in the first name afterwards. Here we'll have like a very simple input tag. So this input tag would have the text as a type. Then we'll have, let's say, name would be like name 0. Then we'll have a placeholder which would say your first name. Here, and then after that we can also have like an ID to it, right? So we can have a identifier for this. We can just call it first name. All right, you can just save this, and you can see how it looks like right now. Okay, we have these two. Let's move on. Let's get to the next part. Again, we'll be having a label. For this would be like the last name, right? So we can have a last name, and then we can say something like, we can say that the last name is going to be this. Input type would actually be text itself, and then we'll have the name. The name would be 1. Then we can have an ID, and the ID can be last name. The next part would actually be a placeholder, right? So we'll have like a placeholder. We'll just say your last name here. Save it up, and now you see the last name as well. So that was a very simple way for you to just have your first name, have your last name. Let's move on. Let's get to the next part. Let's create another p tag, and in this p tag we'll have a label, and the for would just be for like a birthday, so we'll just say b day, and then Outside of this, we can just have like a birthday, right? So after this, what we'll do is that we'll have something called as select. Now the select tag is going to have a few things. First of all, it will have the name is going to be month. The ID here depends on you. We'll just call it B-day for now. And in this one, we'll also have it to be required. Okay. And now inside of the select tag, I'll have a few options. So I'll say option. Now the value of this, we won't talk about the value here. We'll just have a very simple, let me just do this. Yeah. So the option would be this, right? So we'll call that January as an option. We'll save this, and you can see we have all of these things appearing for us. I can copy this, put it up again. 3, 4, 5, and let's just do it for 6 times. So I can just put it here. You can have February, you can have March, May, and then we have at the last June. Okay, so that's what we have right now. Save this, and now you can see all of the months appearing. What you can also do is that before all of these, you can have another one which would be called as unselected. Select, and now you can just choose whichever one you want to have here, right? And at the end, you can again have like at the end, you can have this tag to just submit. So that's also something that you can implement over here. Let's say you want to have like a button tag. You can do button, and you can say save this, and now it has a get started button as well. It doesn't lead you to anywhere, but it just has a button now. All right, so that's just a basic introduction to how you can create basic HTML files. How can you create some normal forms? You can create normal tables. Next, let's talk about CSS, right? So HTML is very simple to learn, nothing too complicated, but the part in which we talk about styling it, that is a little bit it requires you to understand it properly, right? So it will take some time. All right. So what we'll do now is I'll create a new folder over here. I'll call it CSS. And in this folder, I'll have a file named index.html. I'll have one more file which is called as style.css. Right now, what is CSS exactly? CSS is actually short form for cascading style sheets. It is a way for you to style the elements that we have on the screen. So we have this account registration portal. We have all of these things written. We can actually style them to look good. Right now, they're looking quite boring. Not much of like it's nothing too interesting right now, but we'll make it look good. So here again, we'll just do the same thing. I'll have the very basic boilerplate over here. Let me just get rid of this one, and then we can create this. We can open this up. All right, so I'll change this title CSS. Okay, and in the body, let's start off by talking about a few things. So why did I make another file called as style.css? That's what we'll learn first of all, right? Now the reason that I'm doing this is very simple. What happens is that when you have one file and you have put everything into that one file, it becomes really cluttered, right? You won't be able to understand how exactly everything is working. So to make sure that everything works great and everything is properly managed, what you need to do is that you need to create multiple files for the same thing. A few example, like you can just create a very simple like a image tag. You can have some link to that. Let me just create like a very simple wallpaper right? So I can just search for a very simple wallpaper over here. Let's get this, for example, or let's try to get this. I'll just click on this, I'll copy the image address, I'll put it over here. Save it, and now you can see I have this huge image, right? Now the problem is that this image is too big and you need to make it a little bit smaller. So what you can do is that you can use a style attribute over here itself inside of my image tag. That is what we did in our one of the classes, one of the previous projects that we just created. Inside of my style, I have a lot of options for me, right? So I have all of these things that I can do that will give me some sort of modularity, some sort of function onto the web page. An example can be using max width. When I do max width, I just tell it that, okay, the width cannot exceed this much mark. So I'll make it 300 pixels, for example. If I save it, now it looks a lot smaller, right? But I hope you get the idea. I can make it like 500 pixels and I'll save it. And now it looks a lot bigger, right? So that's what you can do. Now the problem is that you will get like, it's not a good way to represent something, okay? So you are writing the elements in one file, you are doing styling in the next file. That is much better versus doing all the things in just one file, right? That is a better way to organize everything. What you can also do is that you can start writing your style over here as well. So you can have your style tag and then you can start writing about all the things. So you can say IMG, and for all of the IMGs, you can start just writing about it. So for example, I can say border radius and I can make it like 3 EM. Save it, and now it would have like a border radius of 3 EM. What is EM? What is 3? We'll talk about that later, but I'm just giving an example that you can create these styling features over this, right? So I can say opacity and I can make it like 100, right? So I can make it like this. Okay, so let's just say that the opacity is maybe 30%. Let's see if this works. Save, and now it looks opaque. But yeah, that's what you can do, right? So you can make them opaque. You can do whatever you want with it. Let's just keep it at 70%. Save it, and now it looks like that. Okay, so now you have border radius. Next part, you can basically understand this one part, right? So what I'm doing is that I'm putting in all of the things in just one file. That's not a good way to organize everything. What you need to do is that you need to link it up to another file. And this file is called as style.css. So how can you link one file to the other file? That's what I'll talk about right now. So I'll get rid of this. I'll save this up. It will get back to its huge, resolution. And here I'll do this. I'll say link, and I'll go to this part. It says CSS. I'll click on this and I'll put in what is the name. The name from default is going to be style.css, and that is the name of my style.css over here. So on this style.css, I can start coding. I can start putting in whatever designs or whatever structure I want it to have. Right. So let's say I want to, I can actually use something like this. I can call this as like a asterisk, and this basically says that for all of the elements that I have, I want to execute this. So I want to say that margin has to be 0, padding has to be 0. Save this, and now it is covering it. There are no spaces in between. All right. And what does margin mean? What is padding? We'll talk about that in just some time. I can also just say image. It can have like a max width of maybe 50%. Save, and now you see 50% of the complete width is surrounded by it, right? So I can also have like max height, and that is what I can execute over here. Max height, and this would be like 50%. And now it only occupies only 50% of the complete height of this web page. Okay, so you can do that as well, or you can keep it at 20%, see how that looks like. All right, I like to use max width actually, that is much better, I would say. And we'll keep it at 70%. All right, this is what it looks like right now. Now, you need to understand something called as a box model. Okay, so what happens is that whenever I have like some content on the website, you can break it down into like a box. So if I go into the inspect element, I'll see this thing over here. I hope you can see this. Basically what happens is that I can see I have a margin, I have a border, and then I have a padding. Okay, now padding is the distance between the content and the border, right? This is the distance that is called as a padding. Then we have something called as border itself. Now border can be really thin, so it can be of negligible width, but it does exist, right? Then we can have like a margin, which is just the distance between the border outline and the rest of the content that I have outside of that. So you need to understand this part. I have all of these things: border width, border style, and I can make it dashed if I save it. And now I have this in dashed style. Okay, I can also change it up as per my wish. I can make it dotted if that's what I want, and now it looks dotted. I can make it double. If I save this, I'll get like double border over here. So this is how easy it is for you to just tinker with this border style. Right, take a look at all of these. What is groove? Just try it out and see how it looks. You can also say something like this. You can say border color, right? Why not? So we'll just have like a very simple blue color. Save this, and now I have like a blue border. It is not properly visible right now, so I can maybe make like a red one, and I can save it. And now I can border width. I can say border width, and now I can make it like 5%. Save it, and okay, it's not looking good. Wait a minute, I'll make it 5 em. Save. So basically you can just tinker with it. You can find a good, let's go with 10 pixels for example. Let's go with like 100 pixels then. So you can basically just see where the margin is, and you can just tinker around with it. You can see how to make it look good. Again, you can use border radius so that you can have maybe like a border of 10 em, and now it looks like this, right? So it curves the edges of the image basically. So that's one thing that you can do. Now what you can do is that, let's say you have 5 images on your website. You don't want to give the same styling to all of the 5 images. This is where we get into the concept of something called as classes and IDs. Okay. Now what happens is that there are a few things that you would want all the images to follow, and then there are a few things that would be different for every single image, right? So that's an important thing to keep in mind. I can take a look at box shadow, and I can make it red. Then it would have like a red shadow to it. Anyways, so I'm just talking about the concept of having classes and borders. How do they work? We'll talk about that in some time. So what I can do is I can just go here and I can say ID. And in this, I can just put in the ID. What ID do I want? So in this case, I want it to be having the ID of maybe pick one, right? And I wanted to have a class of, let's say, image file, for example, image file, right? Let's just make it like that. So here what I'll do is that I'll go here and I can just now start saying dot image file, right? I'll say this and I'll start putting in some properties. So I can just say something like border style, and I'll make it, and let's take a look at something else. Let's take a look at solid, for example, right? So I'll choose solid as a border style. I'll choose maybe max width, and you want to make it 100 pixels. It looks too small. Let's just get rid of this and let's make it about 50%. Okay, better. Let's go with 80%. All right, this is what we see. So next, let's talk about something called as classes. So classes we've discussed. Let's talk about IDs. So what I can do, I can just say pick one, and with this I can present some special features just for pick one. Okay, so I can have multiple images. Okay, let's just take an example of this. Let's just copy this part, copy image address. I'll copy it. I'll do this. Then I'll have a pick 2 here. Save it. I'll save this. I'll go here and I'll see I have 2 images right now, right? And both of them have the same features because I have defined image file as its class. Class, wherever it is mentioned, it will apply those features to those elements. All right. So that's important to understand. But when we have a very specific ID is unique to every single picture. So if I have pick one, I can say maybe something like, maybe I can say, what is it, border radius, I can make it to be 50, for example, right? Or I can make it, what is it, 10 EM. This is what it looks like right now. And then let's say I want to go to pick 2, and in this case I want to have a border radius, and in this case I'll want to have it to just be like 3 EM. Save it, and now we have different features for the same for images, right? So there are 2 images, they have the same class but they have different IDs, and that is what the difference is basically. Okay, so yeah, any questions, guys? If you have any questions, please ask. Okay, what else can we do now? So let's just start talking about a few things. So first of all, what I'll do is that I'll go and I'll create something called as a div. I hope you understood the concept of classes and IDs. I'll create myself a div. So in this div, I will say, I have a very simple div, not IDV, div. And in this div, I'll have an H1, okay? And it would say, it would just have something like, hello everyone. Then it can have a p tag, and here you can create garbage text. Now what is garbage text? It's just a random text that people have written. It doesn't mean anything, but it is just to fill the space. So you can say lorem 10, for example, to have 10 random words. You can do lorem 100 to have 100 random words. It depends on what number you specify, you will get 10 words out of it. I can save it, and this is what I end up getting, right? So I get p tag, and what I can do now is I can create a class for this. So I can call it class, and I can give it a class of box1. Okay, and over here I can say div, and this is a feature that you can use, div dot, and then you can just say that I wanted to have a class of container. Right, so here you can put in whatever you want to have. We will do this, we'll just get rid of, we'll just do this and we'll put it inside. Put it in here. Inside of the container div, we'll have a box1 div. Okay, so, okay, let me just save this. And now what we'll do is going to be really interesting. So first of all, I will now just go to styles part. I'll do this, and now we'll start creating some styles for it. So let's see what we can do. First of all, I have the body, so I can just say body, right? I can just mention any element of my HTML, and I can start styling it. So I'll say body, I can say something like background color. I can put in what color I want, right? So let's just go with this color. It says F4, 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 right? This is a very slight gray color. Then let's have a color, and in this case we'll call this color to be like 555555. Okay, so that's what we can do. This color would be the color of the text, and then we have the background color, which would be the color of the background. Hopefully this is clear for you, all of you right now. Then I'll say font family, right? Font family. This is really important. What you can do is that you can have different fonts for different things. Traditionally, what happens is that normally if you want to create a website, you would go into Google Fonts. This is a place where you can go to find all of these fonts. So let's say I want to get like a font over here. I can just search for that font. Let's say I want to have Algerian font. Right? This is very much famous. So I can just click on, I want to have this font available for external foundries. Let's just not do that. Let's just get like Poppins, for example. So I can get Poppins right here. Okay, this is not in Hindi. This is actually in Hindi. It's not in English. Let's choose this one, right? So we want to have Pota 1 with us. So we can do this, and I can select the style, and then it is my option to, I can just use it. I can just reference it over here. I can just copy this part and I can put it into my index.html. And here I can just put this part. I can save it, and then it says that CSS rules to specify families. So I can just copy this part and I can go back here into the style.css file and I can put this, save, and this is what you end up seeing, right? So basically the text just changes its font based on what value I pass over here. Okay, so now let me do this. All right, we are back to what we were doing, but that was just an example of how you can take some font from Google Font and you can put it into your own project. Now, most of these are going to be free. Some of them might be paid, so you need to be careful about that. But yeah, there are multiple families that you can have, right? So I just showed you font family. Then we can mention the font size, for example. So I can just say font size, and now I can just put in whatever font size I want. I can say 30 pixels, I can save it, and that would look a lot bigger. Then I can say maybe 5 pixels, that would look a lot small. Yeah, as you can see, 15 pixels looks just about fine. So let's go with 15 pixels, or let's actually just change it to maybe 18 pixels. Okay, so font weight is going to be the next thing. So we'll talk about font weight now and how that works. So what you can do is that there is a weight that you can associate with every single font that you're using. So we have weights from 400 up till 800, or like from 100 up till 800, 900. The more the number, the more bold it's going to be. Astha, hello. Yeah, will you please tell me again how to install live server? Yeah, sure. So what happens is that what you can do, you can just go to the extension part and you can just search for live server, click over here and click on install part. Okay, so just install it right now, and that should start working. Hi Amar, hi Astha. All right, so that's what you can do. Let me just close this part. Let me just say that, okay, the font weight can be like normal. You can also use these things, normal, or you can use bold as well. So you can do all of these things, right? Or you can specify exact numbers. So let's say I want to go with 700. If I save this, all of these become a little bit more like bold comparatively. I can also use 800. That would make it a lot more bold. So it depends on what you want to do, right? So yeah. So that was body. That is what you can do with fonts. Let's move on. Let's talk about line height, right? So line height, let's talk about this. So what you can do is that you can specify what line height do you want. If I go with this 1.5 EM, it would look like this, right? So let me just have a little bit more text. Let's say I want to have lorem 20, enter, and now wait a minute, what happened here? Okay, so now we have a lot more text to deal with. So I can do 1.8 EM, and then I get more distance between all the lines, or I can use like 1.3 EM, and now I'll have a lot less distance between all the lines. let's take a look at margin. So what is margin? I have set the margin to be 0 right now, and see what happens now, right? So if I save, the margin is removed properly, right? So the margin is an important part. You can make it to be like 10. If you save this, there is going to be some margin. You can make it, let's say you want to make it 19, save it, and it would just keep increasing like that. You can make it 190 as well, then it would be a lot bigger. Now what you're seeing is that the margin has been applied from the left and from the right and from the top and from the bottom itself, right? So you can specify exactly which part of margin you want to change. So let's say you just want to change margin left or margin right, you can do that as well. For doing something like that, you just need to say margin left, for example. So if I save this, I only get a margin of 190 on the left hand side. There is nothing on the right hand side. I can also just say, margin right, and I can make it, let's say 40 pixels. Save this, and this is, I see some space over here as well now. So it is up to you, whatever space you want to provide. You can make it 0 as well. That would just stretch the content up till the end of the screen. All right. Now let's move on. Let me just bring this back to 50 maybe. Okay, so now let me go to the next line. Let's actually take a look at the div container. So inside of this container, what I'll do is this. I will say that I want the width to be, let's say 60%, for example. Save, and now the width is going to be 60% of the original width that I was having, right? So width is just the place that is available for you to put in your content. Let's say there's 100 units of width. If I say 60%, that only means that I want to apply my content on the 60% of the 60 units that I have out of the 100 units. Okay, we have that. Let's also take a look at margin. So I can just say margin is going to be auto. What auto does is that it just adjusts the margin based upon whatever way you are just reducing the size of the web page or increasing the size of the tab. It would depend on that. So you can do auto, or you can put in specifically that, okay, this is how much space do I actually want, 50 pixels or 40 pixels. Okay, so that's what you can do right there. Any questions, guys? If you have any questions, please let me know. Okay. So next what I can do is that let's take a look at box 1 and what is box 1 actually going to be like. So we'll do box 1, and in this box 1, I need to do dot box 1, right? So dot container, save it, and now it looks a lot better. Okay, so dot box 1, what will be over here? So first of all, I'll have a background color. And this color would just be like this. It would be hashtag 444444. Okay, and then I want to have some color, and this color would just be FFF, which is just white color. So this is what it looks like right now. Okay, now I can also do a few things. I can say border, and this border is going to be like 5 pixels, for example. Apply it, and then I have some border. Let's have to choose the border width as well. So that would be border width, and we're keeping it at about 3 pixels. All right, so that's what we can do. Now this text looks terrible. You need to make it better. You can again just go to Google Fonts. Let's say I want to get Roboto, for example, or let's take a look at this one. Okay, so I can just select the style, and I can again do the same thing. I can just copy this. Let's just change the font, guys. Okay, so I'll change the font. I will get rid of this. I'll put this here, save it, and at the very top, I'll use this as the font family. Save, and now it looks a little bit better comparatively. All right, so we have border width set to be 3 pixels. What you can also do is that you can specify exactly what you want. So I want to have like a solid border, 5 pixels, and the color would actually be red. Save, and now I have this red border. What I can also do is that I can decide the style afterwards. So I can do it in 2-3 ways. I can first of all again just say border width 5 pixels, then I can say border style this, and then border color this, or I can just say border equal to 5 pixels space solid space red. So it depends on how you want to represent. A better way would just be to use border and then just do all of it in the one line. Now what I can also do is that I can change a particular side, right? So I can say border bottom width, right? So I can say border bottom, and I can put in the width. And in this case, I can make it, let's say, for example, 15 pixels. If I save this, now you'll see that the bottom of the border, the size of, or the basic width has increased, and it is now at 15 pixels. All right, moving on. What I can do is that I can just say border top style, and I want it to be dotted. If I save this, now you'll see that the top of the border basically has the style to be dashed or dotted, right? You can use dotted, or you can also use dashed. So I can just now say border, or border, let me just do this, border right, and now I can just change the color of it. So let's say I want to make it royal blue. So now what happens is that, you see what is happening here. We are able to customize it to our own liking. We can do whatever we want. It depends on us, and it depends on what we want to do with it. That's the beauty of using CSS and all of these properties that you have. You can optimize it, you can make it your own, you can put in your own color, your own width, your own style, and you can make it look amazing. All right, let's have some padding also. So what is padding? Again, you'll see what happens is that there's not much difference between the content and the border, right? So we can actually increase that. So what we can do is we can say padding, and we can make it to be 20 pixels, for example. And now you see that we have a lot more space between the content and the border. Okay, so that's one thing that you can do. Let's take a look at something else. So we have talked about box 1, we have talked about container, we talked about body. Let's see what other things can we actually do here. So we can put in different styles for this heading also, right? So I can say something like this. I can just say dot box 1, and inside of this box 1, for all of the H1s that I have, I want to apply this functionality, for example. So I want to have a font family, and in this case, I'll make it Gil Sans. If I save this, I'll see that there is a different font to the heading of it. Okay, so now I have made the font family. Then I can also again do the font weight. I can make this maybe 800, save it, and now it looks a lot more bold. Or I can make it like 200, save it, and now it looks a lot more thin comparatively. Okay, that's what you can do. Then you can also do like a font style, and you can make it italic, save it, and now it is comparatively slant. Okay, that's what you can do. You can also say text decoration. And in this text decoration, you can just put in how do you want it to look. So in this case, I'm making it an underline. So now it has like an underline below the headline that we have. All right, so there you have text decoration. Then we also have text transform. And in this case, we'll just make it uppercase. So let's say you want to make all of it look uppercase. This is what you can do with that. What other things do we have? We have something called as letter spacing. Okay, so this is the distance between all the letters in the heading. So we can make it to be like, let's just take an example of 0.5 em. If you enable that, save it, there would be a lot of distance between all of the letters. Let's say you want to reduce it to maybe 3. Save it, and now also it looks a lot. So let's just make it 0.2. Save, and this is how it looks like. All right. We can say something like this, word spacing. Okay, so there's something called as word spacing as well. And we'll make it 0.3 em. So that would just be the space between the words that I have. Letter spacing is the distance between all the letters, and word spacing is the distance between the words that I have, right? So that's what you can just start implementing. Okay, so we basically talked about the basics of just a few properties that you have with headings, with paragraphs, with just divs. Now let's see what else can we do. Let's try to create something else. If you have any questions, Tenny Garg, hi. If you have any questions, guys, please let me know. Any questions about what we are doing right now? If there are questions, let me know right now. Then I can just fix it up. Okay, no questions, so we'll then just move on. Okay, let's just move on then. So we've made our very first div, and this is how it looks like. Let's try to create something else. So what I'll do now is I will just copy the same thing. I'll put it into another one, but this time I'll call it with a different name. Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll have another div that would be having the class of box2. Okay, so here I can just say inside of the same container, so we'll have the same container, we'll have this box2. So now there are basically two boxes. I'll say that this class is going to be this, and now you can say this is how it looks like. There are no styling to it, so yeah. Okay, so let's try to see how this thing would work. What I'm going to do here is that I'll change a few things. I'll say another heading, then we can put in some p tag that is already there, then we can have like a tag as well, so an anchor tag, very simply, an a tag which would have the class of button, right? So we can say that href would just be like this. That means that it is not going to go to any place. If you just click on it, it won't take you to any other location. And we can just say read more. So basically we are creating this card on which we can just say that if you want to read the full story after whatever is given in the paragraph, click here to read more. So let's see. What we can now do is we can create something over here, a div which would have the class of listing, and here we can have like a h2 says lists, and we can now start writing all the lists right now. First of all, I have a ul, and in this ul I have a li. I will just have, how many li's do I have? I have like 4 li's, so I'll make 4 of them. And here let's see, I have one a tag, an a tag which doesn't lead me to anywhere. Let me just click on enter. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, basically I'm creating an a tag, and in this a tag I'll just say that this is going to be object number 1. This is going to be object 1, right? This is going to be object 1. Then we'll again have the same thing. We will also say that the href is going to be, let's say that the href would be nothing. It can be like this. I can just copy this again and again. I will change it up. I'll say object 2, object 3, object 4. Right, so we now basically have these multiple objects to just click to and to see how they would work. Okay, so let's see what else can we do now. I have created the very basic example. Now let's get into the style, right? So let's see, I have my box 2 with me. Let's see what we can do with it. So first of all, I just go into my style.css. I'll take a look at the A tags. So as you can see, I have these A tags. They have this blue color. They have this, underline as well. So I want to remove all of that. So what I can do this A tag, and I can just say text decoration none, right? Then we can have a color and we can call it 000, which would just be black. Save it, and now all of them look black. Okay, so that's one thing that you can do. One more thing that you can do is that whenever you hover over them, so we can just say A, then we can have this colon, and then we can just say hover. That means that whenever we hover our mouse onto it, this is what we want to have. You want to have like a color of red. If you save it, then if you hover over them, it would change into red color. That's what would happen here. Then what we can do is we can also use something like this. So let's say you click on this thing. Nothing really happens, but now it is no more active, right? So there are active links and then there are dead links. What they mean is that I'll just tell you how that works. So I'll have a color of green then. The way they work is that whenever something is going to be active, this link will be active, then it would appear to me with green color. Okay, so let's say I go over there. As you can see, this thing actually turns into a green color. This read more, as you can see. Hopefully you can see this. Right, so that's what happens over here basically. Why are you using that dot? Yeah, basically what happens is that whenever that is just a short form for me to create something, right? So I can just say here dot color, and I can have this autocomplete that happens because I'm using something, I am using VS Code right now, and that is how this thing would work. In this div, I can just put in this class of color. So I can just make something like this very quickly. I can just say dot OL, and this is what I get. Okay, I can also just use something like this, and this is what I get. I get a div which has an ID of red. Let's say I don't want to use this, I can just get rid of this, and I can again just say, let's say I want to have like a P tag. It would have an ID of maybe 5, for example. This is what we end up getting, right? So these are just some shorthands that we can use. Okay, I see you cannot see it, right? Let me just show it to you right now. What I'm saying is that I can use div, and I can either just say div dot and then something like list, and it would give me this div tag without me having to type all of the things. Okay, that's just a short form for me to write this. What I can also do is that I can create like a P tag, and I can have a dot, and I can say maybe figure, right? So this is what I end up getting. Let's say I want to have like a P tag which has a ID of 1. So this is what I get when I do that. Okay, if I just want to have a div, I can just say dot width, for example. This is what I end up getting. So these are just some short forms that we are using, shorthands you can call them, and they're very simple to use. All right, so we have talked about this right now. Let's move on. Let's talk about the next thing. And for that, now we'll be taking a look at box 2 and how can we design and see how box 2 works. So we'll say box 2, and in box 2, I want to have like a border, and the border would just be like 3 pixels. It would be dotted, and the color would just be like this, CCC. Next, we can just say padding, and padding would be like 20 pixels, for example. And then I can just say that margin would just be 20 pixels as well. And then I can also say 20 pixels, then 0. What this means is that the top and bottom would have a margin of 20, and the right and left would have a margin of 0. What I can also do is that I can just say 20, 0, then I can say 5 pixels, and I can say 10 pixels. What this means now is that top, bottom, right, left. That's how this thing works. The top one has a margin of 20, bottom has a margin of 0, right has a margin of 5, and left has a margin of 10. Right? So if you just save this, this is what you end up getting. Okay. Okay, let's move on then. Let's take a look at listings. So we have another div inside of our box 2, which is having a class of listing. So let's see what we can do with it. It has a class of listing right here. So we can just say, we actually need to use .box to actually save, and now this looks better, right? Okay. So next we'll use .listings. Let me just see if I have, what is the name of the class? It is listing. So we'll just use listing here, and in listing we will take a look at a few things. So we'll just say border, and border would be 1 pixel. It would be solid, and it would be having this color. Then what I can do is I can just say that I want there to be a padding of 10 pixels, and then I want there to be a border radius. I want there to be a border radius, and in this case we want it to be some 20 pixels, right? If I save all of this, this is what we end up getting. We get this very faint outline of this list that we are taking a look at. And whenever we click over here, you can see that the object 1 turns green. That means that the link is now active, right? So that's what it is all about. We have discussed about listing. Now let me just move this like this. So I can now say listing h2, right? Listing h2, and then we can just say text align, and I can now make it something like center, for example. If you save it, you will see that the text would now be at the center. Text align at the center. Okay. Let me see. It is h1 actually. So we'll change this to h1. If you save this, it would be at the center, right? So you can do all types of these things. It's completely up to you. It's completely up to you how you want to make it. So yeah. Let's take a look at the next thing, and that would be to use like this unordered list that we have. So we'll just say that let's say we have listing, then we have unordered list, and inside of this we will have first of all like a padding of 0, and then we have like a list style. Okay, so the list style is where you can just put in what should the list look like, right? So I can just use like a decimal, like a disk. Let's use a disk and see how it looks like. This is what it would look when I use like a disk, right? So I can just say that list style would be none. That means that there won't be any like dots or bullet points, or it would just be normal objects. Okay, so yeah, that's what you can do here. Listing UL, we have padding, then we have list style. Okay, so that's about that. Let's actually take a look at something else. So we'll just say listing LI, and in this we can start talking about the list objects itself, right? So we have object 1, we have object 2. How can we make them a little bit better? So what we can do is that we can just say padding bottom, and this we can make it like 6 pixels. So now there would be a padding at the bottom. Then we can just say something like border bottom, and we can make it like, let's say 1 pixels. We can make it dotted, and we can make it like this. Okay, I can just save this, and this is what I end up getting. I get like this line at the at the bottom of it. All right, so basically we've just learned about how these things work. We have seen how to create some sort of a great looking interface. There's a lot more that we can do here. That is definitely completely true. And now let's take a look at how to create a very simple form, right? So we'll see how forms work. That would also be an important part. So I'll go back and I'll take a look at forms. So let's try to create a very simple form, guys. So okay, so what I'll now do is that I'll start by creating a very simple form inside of our container itself. So I'll call it form. The action would not be there, but it would have like a class to it. So I'll just get rid of this. I'll just say form dot simple form. Okay, there wouldn't be like an action for that. If you're wondering what does that action really mean, it is basically saying that whenever there is something happening, there is some sort of an activity, someone enters some information, where should that information actually go? For that, we need to enter the action for that, right? So that's that. Let's create a very simple div class. We'll just make it like form group. Okay, div of form group. We'll have label, and we'll have this label would be called as name. Okay, then we have like an input, and the input type would basically be text. Then we'll have the name, and the name would just be name itself. Okay, and in the input, after the input, what we'll do is that we'll just close this div. We'll go to the next one. We'll create one more div, and we'll call this like a form group. Okay, so the same thing that we did previously, but in this case we are having like a label, and for this it is called as email. And inside of this, after this, we'll just have like an input type would just be email. We'll have like a name that would just be like an email itself. And yeah, we have another div right here. I can just copy this part, and I think I can just paste it again and again, right? So we can do that. First of all, we can just have like an input tag right here. So I can just call it input, and in this case, I'll just put the type to be like submit. And after this, we will have like a class of button. We will have a value of submit. If you don't understand what value is, what class is, what type is telling me that what is this input type about, right? So what is the field going to be about? What would be the value out of it that we'll get? So I can just save this, and let's see what we end up seeing right here. We have the name, we have an email, we have a submit button, which doesn't really do anything. So let's see what else can we do, right? So first of all, what I would do is I would create like a message over here. In this case, we'll just make it like a message. The type would just be a message itself, or we'll just call it normal text. We'll just include something called a text area. Okay, so we'll just make it like a text area. The name of this text area would just be like message. The ID of this will not actually exist, right? So we won't have an ID for this. Calls and all that, rows, we don't need this actually. If I save this, we have like this huge column that we have just created for ourselves, right? So you can just put in some message over here. And once you have put in the message, you can just put the submit button. So yeah. All right, if I save this, this is what we end up getting, right? So we can just put in the name, we can put in the email, we can put in the message, and we can click on submit. We can also just say required in all the input areas, and then that would require us to put in some data before proceeding. That's also something that you can do. Sir, these are the codes for HTML and CSS. Today, yeah, we are learning about HTML and CSS. Currently, we are focusing on to CSS part of it, right? So we are learning what CSS is and how it basically works. So we are building this UI, a very simple like list, and just see how cards are created. And yeah, that's what we are taking a look at. Right? Any questions if you have, please let me know. All right, let's move on. We have talked about a lot of things, so let me just give you a quick revision. We can edit the background color. We can change the color of the font as well. We can use font family to put in another font. We can also get fonts from Google Fonts. That is really important. We have something called as font size. Then we have something called as font weight. Both of these things are two separate things, right? Size is just how big the font is, and the weight is just how bold or how thin the font would actually be. Then we have the line height. That just gives you a distance between all the lines that you have in like a paragraph. Then you have margin left. Okay, so what margin left does is that it manages the margin on the left side of the content. One more thing to understand is this padding, border, and this margin box model. It's called as a box model, which basically means that we can just take a look at whatever box we have, and then we can whatever content we have, and we can draw this box model over here, right? So we have this distance between A and this border. This distance is actually called as a padding. What is the width of my border? That is called as the border width. And then we have the margin, which is just the distance between the border outline and the end of the screen. Okay, so this is what it really means essentially. Then we have the container. We can put in the width, we can put in the margin, we can keep it auto as well, which as you can see, to set the values of thickness of the margin area. If left to omitted, it is same as the right. So that's how this thing works. It is just automatically chosen. It adjusts it depending on what the screen size is, what the resolution is. Then we have box 1. In this, we can again do the background color. We can put in the color, border. We have talked about this previously. You can also change how the border looks. So for example, we have border top style, we have dotted, border normal is going to be solid. Then we have also talked about, we can do something like this. We can just say border left style, and in this case it would just be very simple, double, for example, right? If you just save this, you will see that now this is going to be double border, right? There are two borders over here. I can also just change the border width. So I can just say border left width, and I can make it like 100 pixels, or let's just make it like 50 pixels, for example. Save this, and then you can see you have these two huge, it looks huge. All right, let's just reduce that to, I think, 20. Let's see how that looks. Okay, so this is what you end up getting. All right, but yeah, let's just make sure that the line height, and what else should we have? We have this, right? So we can make it 1 EM. Looks really big. We can make it like 0.05 EM. Okay, that looks better, right? So we can change this to like 8, and we can see how that impacts it. All right, so that's about how you can manage the headings. We can change whatever side of the border we want to. We can change its style, we can change its width, we can change its color as well. And then we also have padding, which is just the distance between the content and the border that we have. Then we have border 1 heading. Again, you can do a lot of things with the heading. You can change the decoration. You can have like an underline. You can make it uppercase. You can manage letter spacing, word spacing. That's what we did in the last 5 minutes. How to make radio buttons. Yeah, so you can just use a very simple button tag, and then you can choose it. You can make it so that it looks like a radio. right? If you want to know a lot more about it, there are a lot of things that you can cover in CSS, right? So what I would advise you to do is just go to some website. You can go take a look at MDN, Mozilla MDN. Okay, this is a place for you to just learn about web development. Just go to technologies, just click on CSS and start learning over here. This is how I learned everything, right? So this would definitely help you out. This is one place, or you can also just type whatever you want to see, whatever you want to test, and you will see the results and just read from that. All right. So we've done that. Let's take a look at something else. We've also taken a look at anchor tag, right? We saw how we can edit the anchor tag. We saw how we can change. We can have like a text decoration. We can click on none, so we don't have it then. Then we have color, which is set to black right now. Then we have a hover. The color to that is set to be red. And like that, you can just keep changing the color depending on what state the link is in. Box 2 is actually going to be having like a border of 3 pixels dotted, and then we can select the color right here. You can also just change the color depending on how you want it to appear. So let's say I want it to be like something like this, or it can have like a bluish color to it. Let's do this. Let's just refresh it. And this is what it looks like now. Right? So we can also do something like border width, and we can make it 15 pixels. Save it, and now it looks a lot bigger. Okay, so you can do a lot of these things using CSS. It's very simple. I hope you understand how everything works. Then we have listing. In listing, we are trying to create this part, this border radius. So we just say 20 pixels, and that's what we get over there. We can also make it like 10 pixels, and this is how it looks like right now. Okay, then we can take a look at the heading that we have here. This heading, we can also change the font of it. So let's say you want to change the font, you can just say font family, and you can change what family do you want. So let's say we want to have this serif font, so we get list right there, right? So it depends on you, it depends on how you want it to look like. All right. So we have discussed about all of these things. We have talked about UL, LI, and now let's try to do something else, right? So let me just close this up. I don't think there's much left right now. You can do a lot of things here as well. Like let's say you want to have 3 headings, but we'll talk about that afterwards. Anyways, let's just leave that over there. Let's take a look at something else. So what I did is that I just have like a list of things that I wanted to talk about in today's class. So I just have it written down somewhere. I'm just taking a look at what all can we do here. Right, so yeah, just give me a minute. Okay, so let's try to do this. Okay, so I'll open up one more thing. Let's try to learn another part of it. I'll create a new folder, I'll call it new, and in this new one, I'll have another index.html. I'll have another style.c, oh wait a minute. Style.css, oh wait. Style.css right now. Okay, so we have this. So now what I'll do is I will link it up with this thing, right? So I'll just link it. I'll just use like a link.css, and I'll have it linked with my style.css. What I'll also do is I'll just erase this part, erase this, and now I only need to focus on this part of it. Okay, let me just stop the server for that file and open it up for the new one. Open with live server. All right, so now we'll be talking about basically understanding how grids work and how Flexbox works. This is an important class that you should definitely understand properly. So just pay attention what I'm doing, right? So I say container, div has a class of container. Then I say, then I just do box one, and inside of my box one, I have like a h3, which is a heading. I just say like it has like a heading one, and I have like a p tag, and this p tag has like lorem 10. And after this, that's pretty much it. That's the end of my div. Another div would be having a heading of 2, and just like that, I can just keep creating these divs. If I just save it, this is what I get. So let me just save this completely, control, and just put it over here, save it, and now there are multiple headings right here. Let me just change their number so it is distinguishable. 4, I can make this 5 and 6, and yeah, I think that's pretty much it. 7, save. I'm not able to see. Oh, wait a minute. So what I did is that I need to do this. I need to change the heading as well, right? So I'll say this. Box 2, or like heading 3, heading 4, heading 5, heading 6, and heading 7. So let's say we have these 7 things. As you can see, this is how they look like. Let's try to arrange them in proper boxes, and let's try to learn how all of these things work. So what I'll do here is that I'll take a look at how can you do this, right? So let's just go into our style and try to style it up a little bit. So first things first, what I will do is this. I'll have my box 1. Okay. I'll have a very simple box 1, and I'll try to edit it in a way that would be really interesting. So take a look at this. What I'll do now is I'll have a dot box. I'll have a dot box 1, and I'll say that the box 1 would have to have like a flex, and I'll put it 2. Save it. Nothing really happens, but we'll see how to make it happen, right? So we'll say flex 2, order 3. Still nothing really would happen. So just give me a minute. What we can do is that let's take a look at container, right? So let's try to make it responsive. Basically what I'm doing here is that whenever I just reduce the size of this page, the text should actually be responsive, right? All of it should be responsive. So for doing that, for making it responsive, we will use something called as media queries, right? So media queries is what we'll be using here. We'll just say at media. We'll have a min width that we'll assign to it. We'll just say that the min width here would be like what? Min width would just be about 1000 pixels. 1000 pixels right there. And then we'll have like a container, right? And in this container, we will say display flex. Now if I save this, again, nothing really would happen because there isn't like a big change here. Let's try to implement this properly first of all. So what I'm saying is that I can have multiple of those box 1, box 2, box 3s, and all of them will have this flex of 2 and order of 3. Let's try to do this, right? So I'll say dot box 2 flex of 3, flex of 2, and order of 1, for example. If you save this, let's see what we can do. So first of all, what I will do here is this. Just a minute guys, just a minute. So I have my container, and in that I have 3 boxes basically, right? So let's just have 3 boxes here. If you save this, I only have 3 boxes now. I have display set to be flex. Okay, basically what I'm doing is that I'm trying to make boxes of it, and I'm trying to arrange it in a proper way. Okay, and I'll show you what that would look like. If you have any questions, please ask me. Hello sir, I'm black, but I'm late. Welcome Shivam. All right. So we basically have box 1, box 2. We have box 3 as well. So we'll just say flex of 3 or 2. Then we need to have an order of 1, right? That's what you do. And after that, you will have to do this. Okay, so first of all, I'll just save this part, and over here I'll see I have container as the class. Then I have class of box 1, class of box 2, class of box 3. Let's try to build it out completely, right? So after this, after building the basic 3 boxes, then we try to create another one which would have a container 2 as its class. Container 2. Okay, so container 2, instead of this container, we have container 2 box. Container 2 box. Okay, now what happens inside of this container 2 box is that we have this heading, and I can just call it heading 1. If you save this, I get this heading 1, and then we get like a p tag, and in that p tag I can just have lorem 10. Okay, and yeah, there you go. I have my container 2 box ready. I can just copy this, and I can now have multiples of these right now. Okay, how many do I need? I basically need 3 of them. So I'll just have 3. I'm trying to demonstrate an example of how Flexbox basically works. Right, so just give me a minute. And then over here we can start like just coding it up. After this, we also have something called as container 3, right? So I'll create that up. So I'll just say container 3, right? Container 3, and instead of this container 3, I'll have a few things. So first of all, I'll have container 3 box, container 3. Okay, container 3 box. In that, I'll have an h3. Heading would just be 1. And I will have like a p tag, again the same thing. And again, I'll just copy this part, and I will copy it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so basically I'll just copy it for many times. Okay, so we basically have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times basically. Okay, so we have done this much. Let's just click save, and we have a lot of these headings with us right now. So let's see how we can edit this and make it look good. So first of all, I get into my media queries and I take a look at container. And let's take a look at container 2. So container 2 is over there. I can just say container 2, and this would again have a display of flex. This is what I'm telling, right? So this is what happens. Basically, whenever this thing reduces below like a certain threshold that was 1000 set by me, this becomes like that. Okay, this is what you end up getting. And if I, let's say I increase it beyond 1000, this is what I see. Okay, this is what I end up seeing at the end. So this is what I was talking about when I said that we'll be talking about flex box. Basically, we're trying to create a flex here, and this is how it would work. First of all, I have container 1, container 2, and after that I can also have things like maybe justify content. This is important to understand. So what I can do is that I can just say space between. What that does is that it has space in between. I'll just show it to you. If I go like this, it basically takes a look at the space that we have between all the headings, all the content. What you have done now with box styling and CSS, explain it one more. Yeah, sure. So what I'm doing is this. I'll show it to you. I am saying that I want to make it look like if you go into a blog, right? So let's say we go into any kind of a blog. Let's go to that your story itself, right? So in this, you will see that you have multiple elements. You have this main blog, and then right next to it, you have all of these, content over here. So how can we create something like this? How can we create like a layout that looks like this? So for doing this, let me just close this. We will use something called as display flex. It is called as flex box, right? So the way this works is that you tell it how many do you want in just one complete line, and then you put in a limit. If the size of the window reduces below 1000 pixels, this thing would actually collapse and it would become like a long list. But let's say that this exceeds 1000 pixels, then what will happen is that I can actually see how these things would look like. Okay, now I'll just make it look better so you understand it. In just give me some more time. So what I'll do is I'll have container 3 as well. So I'll say dot container 3. Dot container 3, I'll make it display flex. Display flex. So as you can see, now all of this has become like this, right? All of the headings that I had, it is now visible in this format. All right. So now I have container that is set to be display flex. Then we can take a look at dot container. Then we can see div. Then we have, let's say, border, and that border is, let's just set that to be 2 pixels. Let's make that solid, and let's also make sure that the color would just be like slight gray. So now what you see is that we have created these borders. Okay, this is what you end up seeing. You have these headings, and this is how they actually behave. Okay, so that's what I want you to understand with flex. Let's take a look at something else now. So I have talked about container div. Now let's take a look at dot container 2 and then the div over there. So for all of them, again, we'll be having a border, right? We'll be having a border of 1 pixel. It would be of the gray color, and then we'll make it solid. We'll just make it solid. Okay. That's what we do. And after that, we'll be having our dot container 3 div, and we'll do the same thing over here as well. we'll just say border 1 pixel, make it solid, and this will just be CCC. And yeah, we can also have some sort of padding. So if I save right now, this is what you would see. Okay, so all of them have some sort of padding. I can also make like this padding. I can increase the padding to, let's say, 15 pixels. Right, if I save this, now you'll see that the padding is there between the content and the border that is visible right there. Okay, so this is what it looks like right now. Okay, now what I can also do is, let's say I am in container. So, or I'm in container, I can just say that div, instead of this, I can say background color, and we can make it sandy brown, for example. So this is how it would look like. It's just a good way for you to understand how everything is managed, how everything is getting organized. Okay, so you see what happened. This thing is currently in like a list form. Whenever I make it like this, it expands and it is now looking vertically, it is visible properly. This is the effect of flex. Okay, so yeah, it just makes it more responsive basically. Okay, so we've talked about container div, container 3 and all that. Now let's see what else can we do. So for all the container 3 boxes and container 2 box, let's see what is available. So we can just say container 2 box, container, yeah, so container 2 div, container div, container. Okay, so what I'll do now is this. I'll go into the boxes that I have created, and instead of all of them, I will try to use something called as flex bases. Okay, and I'll make it 15. Okay, how that works I'll tell you, but then I'll also use something called as flex wrap. This is a way for you to wrap the text that you have around all of these things. So now it looks something like this. Okay, next part is to use justify content, and we'll make it space between. So you can save it, and this is how it would look. All right. This was actually for container 3 box. Container 3 box. Now let's take a look at what we were doing with container 2. We had box, and in this we'll just say flex bases. We'll set that to be 25, for example. Okay, now how that works is that it basically sees what how much width you have, and according to that it just adjusts itself. Right, so as you can see, let me just have some div at the bottom, right, so you can properly understand how this thing is working. So I'll create a div. I will have some sort of a style to it, so I'll just say style width, and we'll give it a width of 500 pixels. Save, and then we can see we have some space over here. We can have some BRs. And as you can see, this is a lot better visible right now. Okay, so you've done with container and container 3 box, and that's basically how Flexbox works. Okay, so yeah, I mean, it's not that difficult to understand. I can keep changing the flex to maybe 3, maybe 4, and then it would change accordingly. Okay, so yeah, that's just the basics of Flexbox. Now what you can also learn about is grid. Okay, Grid is better than Flexbox in some ways. Whenever you want to have a lot of content, you don't want to just make it look, you just don't want to arrange it like this. You want to have, if you want to do a lot more customizability to it, then you can also get into grid. So we can talk about that as well. Okay, so let's take a look at that. So what I can do is I can create another one. I can just call it, let's say, a grid, and then this grid would have a new file. I'll call it index.html. Then I'll have another one. I'll call this style.css, and we'll see how to use this now. I'll first of all stop the live server. I'll get rid of this. I'll use this, save it, and open up with live server for the new file that I've just opened up. So what we can do now is we can try to open up a wrapper div, and in this wrapper div I'll have a div with me, right? And this div wouldn't really have a class particularly. Okay, and instead of this div I'll just use like a normal lorem 20, for example. Okay, so right now I just have like a lot of text over here. What I can do, I can just copy this part and I can put it over here. Okay, so now if I save, I have just a lot of text right now. Now what I can do with this is very simple. I can just go into the style. Let me just link it up first of all. So I'll just link CSS, style.css, save it. And here, let's take a look at dot wrapper. So what you can do is that you can first of all say display, and you can make it look grid. Okay, and if you just save it just like that, now it has a grid to it, right? It wouldn't look right now. It wouldn't look how I want it to look, but just give me some time. I'll call grid template, and then we'll take a look at columns. Okay, and with this we can just specify what all do we want here. So we can just say 70%, and then we want like a 30%. What this does now is that it would create something like this. Okay, so 70% will be occupied by this first column, and then we have another column which would be taking in 30%. Okay, we can also have like a gap over here, so I can just say grid template rows as well, if that's what you want, and we can make it like let's just go with 30% and then 70%. Save that, and then you have this 70%, 30% arrangement over here. Let's see something else. So we can also do grid column gap, and you can make it equal to, let's say for example, 1 EM, and if you save it, it just has some gap in between of the columns. Okay, one more thing, you can put in gaps in the rows as well. So this is a way for you to just not only have columns but also have rows. So that's added benefit that we did not have with Flex. Okay, I can also go into wrapper, and here I can go into div, and instead of the div that I have, I can just say background, and this background would just be equal to TE. If I save it, it looks a little on the gray shade. We can put its padding to be like 1 EM, save it, and now there's a lot more distance between the content and the border. We can also have like a border over here. You can make it like 5 pixels. It would be, let's just go with solid. And then we want to make it look like a blue border, for example. Oh. If you save it, this is what you end up getting actually. Okay, so yeah, this is how this thing would actually look. You can also do a few things. You can just say margin right, and you can have like a margin over here of, let's say, 30 pixels, and you can save that, and then you'll have some space over here as well. So this is how this thing basically works. You create these grids, and then you use them to create all of these columns. Then you have gaps. Then you can also have like rows that you can specify. And yeah, that's how this thing would work. What you can also do is, let's say you want to, you can say div, then we have the nth child, and we want it to be odd. What I'm doing here is that I am trying to say background would be like this. So now what is happening is that on every odd child of this wrapper, which has this child of div, it will change its color to be red. So I can just do like, if you save it, this is how it looks like. Okay, that's not good. You can make it like sky blue. Okay, that's comparatively better. So yeah, that's how you do grid. That's how you learn about grid. So can you tell me emulator for Windows? Emulator, I have not used emulator for Windows. You can, no, that is for Android. I was thinking of BlueStacks. BlueStacks is for Android. I don't know about that actually. Okay, so we have learned about how these things work. We've learned about wrapper, we have learned about grid and flex. These are the two most important parts of CSS. Now you won't be able to learn all of these things just in 3 hours. It would be your responsibility to devote time to it, to learn it, to experiment as much as possible. Okay, so yeah, that's just something to keep in mind. Okay, we've talked about grid. We can do a lot more things actually. Let's see. So what else can we talk about today? Let's talk about animations, shall we? Do you want me to talk about animations? Let's do animations, guys. So first of all, what I'll do is that I'll create a very simple web page. There's nothing much on it. So I'll just open up another folder, or let's just do it over here itself. So I'll get rid of this. I'll get rid of all of this content right now. Save this. Save this. So we don't have anything right here. Okay. I'll create this. I'll just link it up. So link CSS, style.css. Then I'll just save this. And here in the body tag, what we'll do is that we'll create a very simple box div. Okay, it has a class of box. And that's pretty much it. That's all that we'll have here. We'll also have like a container that we'll be using here. So I'll just do this. And here I can just have my div ending. Okay, now that's all that we'll have to do over there. I can just do like a very basic container, and in this container I want to first of all have like a background color, and I'll just make that to be dark. You know, let's just go with dark orange. Save that. Nothing really has happened. What we'll now do is that we'll just create its height. So height can be, let's just go with 400 pixels, and the width would actually just be 400 pixels. So it's like a box. Save it, and now you should see yeah. So this is what you end up seeing, right? This is what you get. This is a very simple box that we have here. Now what we'll do is that we'll try to have another box inside of it. So we'll say dot box, and in this we'll just have a very simple background color. This would have a background color of like deep sky blue, and then it would have like a height of 50 pixels, 50% actually, and it would have a width of 50% itself. Save that, and then this is what we end up seeing, right? So we have this. Let's make it 30, I guess 40. Let's do 40. Save this, and now it looks a lot smaller. But basically we have this this box instead of a box, and we'll try to rotate this box. We'll try to do some animations with this box. Okay, so what you can do is you can just take a look at this, do this. Okay, so first of all, we'll just say animation, and we'll say left to right. 1 second, and we'll say ease in, and after that what we'll do is that we'll have to create this actual animation. So for what we do is that first of all we create this animation, then we actually use this animation by using this animation attribute, you can call it. So we say add keyframes, and then add keyframes, we'll write the name. So the name of this one is left right, and with that we can start coding and telling it exactly how it works. So whenever you're creating an animation in CSS, first of all, it's important that you put in what should the box look like at every single percentage basically. So you can just say at 0%, for example, it should have, let's say it should have like a background color of, let's just go with dark orchid or orchid, and then it should actually transform. Now what does transform does, you can just decide where do you want it to move. So you can say translate X, and we can say it is at 0 position. So we can just save this. What you're seeing right now is a change in its color. If I do it again, as you see, it changes from an ultraviolet color from deep sky blue color to this dark orchid color. Okay, so that's what happens. Okay, so we are now at 0%. Let's go at 35%, for example. So at 35%, we'll do this. Let me put it over here. 35%, or let's just make it 33%, right? So exactly 1/3 of the way there. So I'll say this, it would need to have a background color of brown. It needs to have a transform. It needs to transform. First of all, it will transform in Y by 100%, and you'll see what this looks like in just some time. So just wait, and then you want it to rotate as well. Rotate by 180 degrees, or like just 30 degrees. Let's just do 30 deg. And now if I save this, this is how it looks like. Okay, this is what it looks like. That is a bit of an animation right there. Let's see what else can we do with it. We also want to reduce its height and weight, or not the weight, height and width actually. So we can just say height. The height can be, let's say, 20% of what we currently have. And then we can say the width would also be 20% of what we are having currently. So this is what you get. Okay, it basically reduces its size and then it goes back to normal because we haven't added what happens at 100%. So we'll do that right now. So yeah, that's about that. Let's actually take a look at 66%. And in this case, we will have a background color of, in this case, we'll just call it corn silk. And then we'll say that we want it to transform. We want it to translate in, first of all, Y by 100%. We want it to translate in X by 100%. And then we want it to translate in Z, or not in Z, it should just rotate 60 degrees. This is what we get, right? So it moves, it gets to that point, and then it comes back. Let's just make it like 50%. That would be better. Okay. So that's what we do with it. And if you want to change its size as well, you can do that too. You can just say height would be 60%. let's say width would also be like 70%. Save this and let's see what it does, right? So it started off as a square, it became like a rectangle in between. So yeah, you can do a lot of things, right? So let's take a look at 100%. What do we do at 100%? Well, first of all, we will need to say background color of, what is the color? It is called as dark golden rod. Okay, then we'll have like a translate in X, and in this case we wanted to translate 100%, translate in Y by 0, and we wanted to rotate by 360 degrees. So we'll just do 360 degrees. Now if I save this, as you can see, this is what we get. This is what we end up getting. Okay, now I can do a lot more things with it. So what I can do is, let's just go back here. So what I can now do is that I can say infinite over here. Now if I just play it, it would just do it automatically, right? So this is what we end up getting over here. What do you think? How does it look like? You like it? You don't like it? What do you think? I think that this looks really interesting. You can do a lot of things with it, right? So you can actually go into this website called as Animate.js, and this is a library that you use in JavaScript to just have all of these effects, right? So if you want to learn more about this, you can just go to the documentation of this website and you can start taking a look at how these things work. So a lot of these effects you can just do. Take a look at this, right? So it becomes a circle from a square. And how that happens, you can see how that would actually happen. So we can see CSS transform. So all of these things you can do. That was interesting. Can you see this? So this is what happens. Like when you can use this library, you can do a lot of things like these. Okay, so yeah, I mean, that's a very basic introduction to animations. You can do a lot more with this. Again, sky is the limit. You can also make it move in 3 dimension. So you can also just say translate in Z, for example. So if you want to do that, you can just say translate Z by 100%. If you save that, let's see what happens now. It actually doesn't translate because again, it is only a 2D object. But if you were to have like a 3D cube, then it would definitely do that too. Right? So yeah, this is animations in CSS. You can do a lot of things with it. If you are interested about how can you make other ones, I'll show you an example of what other things can you do, right? So if I just get rid of all of this, I can create a very simple, I can call this simple shape one. So if I just call it simple, shape, and I will call this 1. I can just copy this part. So now I have 4 of those. I can just make this like 2. I can make this to be 4. And this can be, oh wait, 3 is missing. Okay, so we basically now have this with us. Let's see what we can do with this now. So the way this works is that we basically have this with us, and in this we say this width is going to be 200 pixels, right? So let's just define that first of all. Then we say that the height would also be 200 pixels. Then we say that the display would be inline block. There are multiple ways for you to just display something. In this case, we're just using inline block. There are pluses and minuses, depends on what you want to use it for. And then you can choose the display method that is best for that one. And now I can talk about .1, right? So what happens in .1 is that we want to create a very basic animation. I'll show you how that would look like. So the background color would actually just be this FFAABB. If I save this, this is what I get. I have a very simple you know, cube, or like a very simple circle, a square actually, sorry. What we can do is that we can just say WebKit animation, okay, and we'll call it simple square to circle, right? Simple square to circle. We want the timing to be 1 second. We want it to not go back to its original position, and then we want it to be linear, okay? We want it to happen infinitely. That's why we use infinite. And then we say very simple animation. Again, the name would be the same, simple. So we'll just use this for example. You can just paste it. Nothing really would happen because we need to actually define what this actually would be. So I can just create a very simple add keyframes. I'll call this simple square to circle, okay? And over here, what I'll do is that I'll just say at 100%, this is what I want it to be like. So I'll just say WebKit transform, and in WebKit transform, I'll just say, actually I'll be using WebKit border radius, right? So we'll just use border okay, so I'm using WebKit border radius. I'll set that to be equal to 50%. Basically, I'm converting it into a circle. If I save this, it becomes like a circle. Okay, so this is what it looks like right now. WebKit border radius. Let's say you want to have something else. Let's say you want to maybe, let's see, if you want to make it into like 80%, if you save this, this is what it becomes. Okay, let's say you want to make it 30%. All right. So yeah, guys, this is something that you can also try out yourself. Just mess around with it, see what you can create. Let your imaginations fly as much as you can. .2, and in this one we will try to create another. We'll have a background color, not an attachment. Background color, and this would be. You can just save this, and then we can just say WebKit animation, and in this one we'll just call it simple rotate. Okay, and we want it to happen in 2 seconds. Then we'll just say linear. We'll just say infinite, and we'll also say alternate. Then what I'll do, I'll just save this completely and I'll put it I'll just say animation, and we can put it over there. So now you need to create this simple rotate keyframe, right? So again, we'll be using this. So we'll say at WebKit frames actually. So this should at WebKit keyframes. Similarly, we'll just say at WebKit keyframes, and I'll mention simple rotate over here. And instead of this, I would be saying 100%. When we reach to 100%, we want to say WebKit transform, and basically you want to rotate it by 360 degrees. So we can do this, and now it changes and it rotates basically. Okay, so that's another thing that you can do. If you have any questions, please tell me. Yeah. Badhiya laga na? Like, it's actually really good. You can do a lot of things with it. Okay, so after this, we can also have 3 and 4. So I think we have some time, so I'll just show you how those ones, you can also create them. So again, we'll be having a background color, and the color would be this. AABBFF. Let's see what we can do with this one. Here I'll just again be using the same thing. So I'll just say WebKit animation, and this one would just be simple move. Simple move. It should be happening 2 seconds, and it should be linear, and it should be alternate. Okay, again I'll just copy the whole thing. And here we'll get rid of this part. Save, and now we'll create this one as well. So I'll just do this. I'll just say WebKit keyframes, and in this case we are doing simple move. Okay, so we'll just say 100%, and in this case we will just say WebKit. We are moving it, right? So what we'll do is that we will say scale actually. So we are using WebKit transform, not animation. We are using WebKit transform, and we say scale. So how much would it scale? We are making it to scale to 0.5. So now it reduces its size by 0.5, and that's what it looks like right now. Okay, so that's another thing that you can do. Talking about the last one, let's just quickly make the last one, and then we'll call it off for today. I think you've learned a lot. It's important that you create projects, make a website and show it to me. How can you make it from scratch? That would be really interesting to see. I can just make this color to be fabric, and again I'll be having the same WebKit animation. This one would be called as simple. Okay, this would be simple scale actually, simple move. Simple move. This one should be called a simple scale because we are scaling it, right? So we'll call it scale. We'll call this one as well scale. And then we'll try to create this one as well. So again, we'll say the same thing. We will say 2 seconds, linear, infinite, alternate. Save this. And then we can just copy this part. And go at the bottom and try to create this effect as well. So again, we'll have to just say at WebKit keyframes, and we'll call it simple move. And here what we'll do is that we will say translate X by 100 pixels. So we'll just do WebKit transform, and we'll make it to be like translate X by 100 pixels, and then we'll do this. Let's see if this works. So this does not work. Let's see what the problem is. Unknown at rule. Okay, I have said keyframes 2 times. All right. Save this and let's see if this works now. Okay guys, so that was all I wanted to talk about in today's class. Unexpected. Right, that is all that I wanted to talk about. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me and we can talk about that. Make sure that you join the class that we are having. Let me just close this up right now. Make sure that you join the class that we are having on the 31st of January. My class is on 10 a.m. I'll be talking about 7 really interesting Python modules and 3 data structures that you should be using. Really interesting class. Do join and I would love to interact with you all. Okay, thank you so much. I'll see you.